gave you 20 seconds, but I didn't know you guys could. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Orange County School Board's work session, which has been scheduled for today, Thursday, January 16th, 2025, for the purpose of discussing the OCPS 2025 Strategic Plan Mid-Year Update. The public will not have an opportunity to participate in this work session, and by that I mean provide public comment, because it's not a regularly scheduled school board meeting. No action will be taken, and there'll be no open public comment period in which the public would normally address the school board on relevant topics. With that said, for those of you who are in the room, thanks for joining us. I know you're all here to present. I think most of you. I look forward to hearing from you. And those of you who might be tuning in, we appreciate your interest in Orange County Public Schools. With that, Dr. Vasquez, Superintendent, you are recognized. Oh, I should do a roll call. Sorry about that. Let me do a quick. No, you do. After roll call, yeah, it's the page. Thank you. Thank you. I think it's only pre-agenda that we don't. All right, let's do a quick roll call. Starting with Member Felder. I'm here. Member Gallo, I believe, may be joining us. Member Gallo, are you online with us? Just dropped? Okay. If you can let me know, Mr. Pomerini, when she logs in. Member Vanos?
I'm here.
No problem. Member Vice Chair? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Member Douglas? Here. Member Ferrant?
Here.
And Member Salamone?
Hello.
How about that? Just a few minutes ago, we were just about nobody here, and we're all here. That's wonderful. Okay, we will begin our meeting with a moment of silence, followed by Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Member Gallo, have you joined us or rejoined us?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm here.
All right, thank you. Let the minutes reflect that Member Gallo is with us. All right, with that, Dr. Vasquez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are delighted this afternoon to be able to present to you a midpoint review of our strategic plan. I'm sorry, I can't seem to be speaking this morning. And you will see data being presented to you by Dr. Boarder and his team. All of the chiefs are going to be available to answer any specific questions you may have regarding their specific metrics on the various goals that we are hoping to be able to achieve by the end of this year. I do want to say thank you so much to the team. They have been working not just with the chiefs, but with the various departments in order to be able to not just compile the information, but to ensure that the data that we're using is accurately measuring what we're trying to achieve. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Dr. Boarder. Oh, excuse me, one more. When we have done this in the past, we have not been able to achieve the entire presentation in one session, and so we are going to try something a little different. We did send out the presentation to the board, I believe about a week ago, so that you had a chance to review it. We are going to present in sections, and then at the end of that section, we'll pause and give you an opportunity to ask any question you may have for that particular section. So if a question pops up, if you'll write it down, I think this strategy may help us get through the entire presentation in one setting. Dr. Boarder, I turn it over to you.
Thanks, Dr. Vasquez. Good afternoon, Chair Jacobs, members of the board.
Doesn't sound like your mic is on, or We always say they're very sensitive.
Testing. Good afternoon. Test.
Doesn't sound like it. But it doesn't sound like mine's on either until I get like super close, so.
Testing. All right, very good. Good afternoon, Chair Jacobs, members of the board. Looking forward to presenting our midpoint on our OCPS 2025 strategic plan today. Joining me at the table is our Senior Administrator in Research, Measurement, and Strategy, and Mr. Ben Allen, and also joining me this afternoon as well is our Senior Executive Director, Dr. Jennifer Sasser, and also our newly anointed doctorate Director of Accountability, Dr. Michelle Paul. So congratulations to Michelle. We'll begin today with a review of our current state assessment data, followed by strategy progress for each key performance indicator, closing with school board discussion. We're going to begin with the review of our state data. It's important to note that the data that is being shared is from our vendor files, as the official state file data is not yet available. We're going to begin with STAR Early Literacy Assessment outcomes. For Progress Monitoring 2, 32% of our kindergarten students scored at level 3 or higher, which is compared to 30% this time last year. Our first graders remain at 25%, 3 and above, as the same as it was at this time last year. Moving to STAR Reading, 71% of our kindergarten students are scoring on grade level and above, compared to 70% this time on PM2 year prior. I'll pause for a moment for you to review the outcomes for first and second grade. For STAR Mathematics, 29% of our kindergarten students scored at level 3 and above, compared to 26% this time year prior. I'll pause now for a moment for you to review the first and second grade mathematics outcomes. Now we're going to move to English Language Arts reading on the Florida Assessment of Student Thinking, FAST. 45% of our third graders scored 3 and above, compared to 41% this time year prior, whereas the state scored at 40%, which is the same as year prior. I'll pause now for a moment for you to review our fourth and fifth grade outcomes.
Dr. Vasquez? Member Ferrant wants to ask a clarifying question.
Okay, I just want to double check. When you're saying, when you're explaining everything, so the 2023, 2024, the PM3, that's like the last, like in May, they're taking that. The PM2 is what it was halfway through the year. And then the 2024 is right now halfway through the year. So the last two slides are the comparable ones, or the rows, and the first one is just like end of the year data.
Correct. Thanks, Board Member Ferrant, for the question. The first column, that's where we finished last year on PM3. And then column 2 is where we were at this point last year, and column 3 is where we currently are at this year. All right, now we're going to talk about ELA reading on FAST for our middle school students. 52% of our sixth graders scored at 3 and above, compared to 40 on PM2, compared to 46% year prior. The state scored at 50%, compared to 47% year prior. I'll now pause for a moment for you to review the outcomes for 7th and 8th grade.
Can we go, I'm sorry, can we go back?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay. I do think questions like the one Member Ferrant asked are important so that everybody understands what we're looking at. I have a specific question on this, and those types of questions I'm going to write down, and we can forward them to the staff, correct? Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't explain clearly. We're going to
No, I didn't
stop.
listen clearly.
We're going to stop in just a few slides, and then any questions you have on the slides up to that point, we'll answer, and then we'll move on to the next set of slides. So you will have all of your questions answers. But what's happened in the past is that our rhythm wasn't in sync with the time that we allocated. So we're going to try this strategy to see if it makes better sense.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to share our ELA, English Language Arts, FAST data for high school. As of PM2, 42% of our ninth graders are scoring 3 and above, which is compared to 41% this time year prior. The state performed at 44% compared to 43% year prior. I'll now pause and allow you to review the outcomes for 10th grade. Now we're going to move to mathematics.
Okay. You're a little faster,
Okay.
at least
My
for two of
apologies,
us.
Chair. I'll go back.
Yeah, but see what, yeah, but I like to look here and see where we are today, so it just takes a minute longer.
May I make one more comment? Dr. Porter,
Yes.
before you move on, maybe just ask. Can
Sure,
we move
we're-
on to the next slide? That way
Oh, I
everybody
got
has
it.
enough
Very
time.
good.
Or even better, if board members would just look up, well, I don't mean better, there's two ways of doing it. But if the board members, everybody, when you're, just look at Harold, and then he will know he can go on. That works too. As long
Thank you.
as we
Thank
all-
you, Chair. Thanks, Superintendent. Moving to elementary mathematics. For mathematics on the Florida Assessment of Student Thinking, 34% of our third grade students on PM2 scored 3 and above, which is compared to 33% year prior. The state performed at 28% on PM2, which is compared to 31% year prior. I'll pause for a moment for you to review our 4th and 5th grade outcomes. Okay, moving to our middle school mathematics. For FAST, 40% of our sixth graders are currently scoring 3 and above, which at this time last year was at 38%. The state is currently at 39%, which at this time last year was at 37%. I'll now pause for a moment for you to review 7th and 8th grade mathematics. Okay, and finally, our last slide on data before we open it up for questions is algebra and geometry. We do not have our PMA2 data yet. That is still being worked on. It'll be finalized momentarily. But PMA data, which progress monitoring activity, those are assessments that we use to help inform our teachers and administrators on how the students are progressing in algebra and geometry. So that's different than the PM state assessment. And so those on those assessments during the PMA 1, which covers just the material covered for that 9 weeks, not the whole year as PM does, we were at 53% in Algebra 1, and we finished last year at 53% as a comparison for the year. For geometry, for the first grading period, we were at 54%, and that is where we concluded last year. So we will share with the board PMA2 data for algebra and geometry as it becomes available. So I'll pause there and open it up for questions on our current state assessment data.
All right, thank you. Let's start with Member Ferrant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple questions just to kind of clarify. I know if we can go back to the star reading, I should have written down which slides they all
thank
were,
you, Ms.
but
Ferrant.
it was
Very
the
good.
second grade star reading.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you remind me again, is this the one where if a child is in kindergarten and they don't pass it, then they try again in first grade, then they would try again in second grade?
So the state has a recommended score for transitioning from STAR early literacy to STAR reading. We follow that as a district, and so you have students transitioning to STAR reading throughout the year. So in kindergarten, you have larger numbers of students that are taking STAR early literacy that have not moved yet to STAR reading. And then in first grade, not quite the same numbers as in kindergarten, but more kids are transitioning. The students in second grade in STAR reading, this encompasses all second graders, which is different than for kindergarten and first grade, where you have partial student populations in STAR reading, and then the other in STAR early literacy.
Which is what causes that difference in numbers.
Yes, ma'am.
Which the 41% still is concerning, but, or 40%, whatever. Okay, so then the other one would be for math. It must have been for that next. I should have been a little more specific, but it looks like everything is, I don't know where I was. Let's move on to another one because I don't know what my notes here, what I've been thinking here, but let's see. For fourth and fifth grade math, we are lower than last year. So when we look at that kind of data, what is being done at the school level to make sure that students are increasing and understanding the math?
So I can share, Ms. Ferrant, that soon we'll be sharing with the board an interactive accountability denominator report that our team has worked on, which allows teachers to drill down to the student level and utilize data to inform instructions, and our administrators can also utilize that. We are currently also, I know, corrective programs and the cadre leaders are immersed in looking at the data and supporting schools on supports and needs and adjustments that may need to be made based upon PM2 data.
Okay, perfect.
It's just some of the higher level things that are happening with the data.
Superintendent?
Additionally, Dr. Brown Cannon and her team have analyzed the areas where there needs to be remediation. They've gone back into the curriculum resource materials and have revised those, and that information is being pushed out through the principals and to our teachers so that they know some additional things they may be able to do for the areas that are below what we expected them to be.
Okay, perfect. And then one just final question. It was on the seventh grade math. And I just want to clarify this. This is because it's real low here, and this is, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's because a lot of kids move up to like an eighth grade math, and so they're taking that eighth grade.
Thanks, Ms. Farrell, for the question. So the math progressions across districts in the state, there's variance there. And so we afford our students the opportunity to take algebra when they're ready in seventh grade and then move to geometry in eighth grade. We tend to have more students that are doing that, which allows them to get to calculus A, B, and BC in high school, and then other higher level math courses. So those numbers do reflect here. When you're trying to compare to the state, it's a little more difficult since the math progression is not comparable across school districts.
Okay,
Superintendent?
Thank you.
Additionally, I asked the team to put together information so the board could see the total number of seventh graders that we have, and then how many of them are taking algebra, how many of them are taking geometry, how many are taking pre-algebra, and then how many are in seventh grade math, so that you can then see the number of students that represent the 19%. They will tell you that we're going to see that there are gains because this represents such a small percentage of the total mathematics, but it's specifically in the seventh grade. So that as soon as that has been compiled, they're going to send it to the board.
All right, thank you. Member Byrd.
Thank you. I have a few positive things to say. I saw a lot of really good data here. I saw several categories that were higher than where we were last year. In fact, many were where we were at the end of last year, here at the midpoint. So kudos to superintendent for your leadership and for our teachers and everybody that's working so hard to make these gains. And I want to look at the star reading one more time, because I think while the 40% is concerning, I think there's a huge win here, and that's at the first grade level. And the fact that 83% of our first graders at the midpoint are scoring 3 or higher. That's a huge gain. First of all, it's almost 10 percentage points than where we were last year. But not only that, that's saying that 83% of our first graders we're saying proficient, right? Proficient where they need to be for reading in first grade, right? That's what that's telling us.
So thanks, Ms. Byrd, for that. Just to add some clarifying points, I think that you are correct that this is a very good sign. I would say it's a very good sign because on PM2 last year, we were at 74%, and PM2 this year, we're at 83%. And we haven't changed our practices, meaning we're following the state recommendation for when a first grader should transition from STAR early literacy to STAR reading. So this is not all first graders.
Okay.
But the first graders who have transitioned from STAR early literacy, because they've gotten the high enough score to move to STAR reading, those students are performing 9% higher than they were last year. And I will tell you, we were following that recommendation last year on the score. So to me, to your point, that 9% uptick is a great sign.
Okay, so forgive me then, it's not 83% of all of our first graders. It's
Correct.
83% of the first graders that are doing star reading. So there are still students that are in the early literacy.
There are.
So
and
this might be another area that would be beneficial to be able to see
Sure.
how that
Absolutely.
compares to our total number of first graders.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ms. Byrd. And just one more thing that you spoke about, just wanted to add to that. So second grade, there are a few students still in STAR early literacy, certainly not near the numbers in first grade or kindergarten. And then I also wanted to add that the 3 and above for the state language now means on grade level or above. So they're on grade level standard. Proficiency is referred to once they get to level 4 and
Level 4,
above.
okay.
Yes.
So they are on grade level. This is just so encouraging is because we know we've got this focus on, our science of reading. And this is a good sign if our youngest readers are seeing these kinds of gains, then I would expect that our second grade numbers, our third grade numbers, everything will start each year to keep moving up as these early readers who are so successful now at this age, as they age. So So I'm excited about what I'm seeing. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Bird.
All right, thank you, Vice Chair. A couple of questions. Several of them have been answered. Math, 7th grade, kind of like everybody else. I'm like, what do my notes mean? The drop from PM3 to where we are. Does this go back to the question, I think, that Member Farrat asked in terms of the what looks like a disparity in the data? And this goes back to Dr. Vasquez in terms of how you've asked staff to break out this information. Will we be able to see that cohort of the students that match the state's cohort of students, the ones that have not advanced into, okay, I might be on the algebra. Go ahead.
You are. So every district has the ability to group or provide access to courses to the different students. We have been committed for over a decade to really advance our students if they are able, especially in mathematics at the middle school, because we know how vital algebra mastery is as they are pursuing many of the careers and pathways in high school. Not all districts have the resources to do that. They may not have the teachers that have the certifications to be able to teach the algebra or the geometry in middle school, because that does require a different certification than the middle grade certification. What the data will show you is, and I'm going to try and make a simplistic example. Let's say that we have 1,000 students in 7th grade in our district. And out of those 1,000, there are 200 that are in 7th grade regular math, or they're taking the 7th grade assessment. Then we will show you there may be 500 that are taking algebra. So they are not included in this number. And maybe there's 200, forgot my math, I think I have one now, that are in geometry. Those students are not included in this number. So that's what that will allow you to see, and the algebra and geometry are not captured in this data.
Okay, so you're going to show us the numbers, but I'm assuming you're also going to show us within those numbers what the percentages of the 500 that are in regular math, that of those, which percent of those are proficient?
They can do that, yes. Yeah. That's a great point, because this only shows us out of the students that are taking the 7th grade math fast assessment, how many are on grade level. So yes, we'll be able to do that. Right. And just to give you an idea, not all certainly, but the majority of the students that are taking 7th grade math struggle with very basic math concepts, such as their times table. They may not have a grasp on how to work with fractions, with decimals. And so some of those concepts that are taught in 7th grade that require a mastery of those basic numeracy skills, they struggle because they don't know them. And so that's certainly, again, not for all students, but I would venture to say that for many, if not the vast majority of the students that are taking 7th grade math, they struggle.
Right, so we can expect those numbers to be lower than if we had all of our students taking 7th grade math. And by encouraging them all to push themselves, we can also expect all of their numbers to be on the lower side than the average for the state, unless everybody is equally pushing our kids to try their best. Okay, got it. I did have, and I think it was probably answered, going back to slide number 4, back to Vice Chair's point, can can you look back at, say, last year and see the correlation between the change from the level 3 PM2 from the previous year to the level 3 PM2? So this same data that we have, but looking at the previous year and seeing if we had, right now we have that 9-point gain, and we're anticipating that that is going to have a positive impact on next year. Can we look at last year to see what kind of a gain we had? And is there, in fact, a correlation there? I would think so, but.
So I'll allow the team to add, Chair, but when it comes to star reading, there's also variances in that data across the state. Students can test multiple times within the platform. It's also part, I think now they've divided out, but accelerated reader has been in there in the past. Ben, any additional?
Yeah, the other, is this on?
It's hard, I can't hear you, but I don't know if
Okay.
it means it's not close enough or it's not on. I can't tell you how close you have to get, but very close.
I'm feeling very comfortable with the microphone right now. Here we go. Here
I
we go.
don't blame you.
So the other complexity with that is some of the scales have changed between the first year that the test was administered. There are multiple scales that we'll have to look at. So we might have to do some analysis to get the numbers to work. So we'll take a look at what's available and what we can provide.
Okay. I had one other question, and I'm not sure from my notes if I can tell what it pertained to, but it was an area where we had a drop that it might have been math. It was an area where we had a significant drop. And what I was curious about, so we're looking at the entire district. And fortunately, you can look school by school and student by student. When you look at some of the data, especially where we are not seeing the progress that we want or would hope for, when you look at it school by school, are there distinct differences? Are all schools kind of at least progressing at the same rate, or do you see some that aren't, they might be lower, but they're not the same lower as the previous year? Boy, I am not very articulate today. Ms. Sasser, Dr. Sasser knows what I'm talking about, though.
Thanks, Chair Jacobs. Yes, there's variances across the schools. So this is, the district cumulative averages. But the superintendent has conversations with us about trends that we're seeing. We provide information to the superintendent and Dr. Armbruster that then is triangulated with other pieces of data, including what we see at the schools on a day in and day out basis, which is a big part of what we're looking at in those discussions, so that then we can provide supports and adjustments as needed. So there's, those are variances from school to school. We indicate where we see the largest drops and also the largest gains, and then that information is taken from there and correlated to what the other data pieces and also what is being seen at the school, and then from there plans are worked on.
This is going to be a really broad question. I think you're going to just tell me no, but when you see a school that's kind of an outlier, it may have been lower last year than other schools, but it's not making the same gains. Are there certain factors that you find to be commonalities? Leadership in the school, training of our educators, and any specific things that you can tie back to the root cause? Dr. Vasquez.
I'll give a response, and then by all means, if you have been able to find anything within the data, I can tell you that several years ago there was an attempt to take a look at various factors that impact the school grade. We looked at the number of years the principal had been there. We looked at the number of years the principal had been a principal. We looked at the number of teachers that I forgot the range, but were new teachers or teachers in their first 2 to 3 years. We looked at the number of students with Title I. There were several factors. And that then gave us a way to use more than one data point to identify schools of need or schools of concern that would need the support. My recollection, and I don't want to be held to it, is because it was, I mean, I was a CAO back then, but the leadership component was a huge factor, which is why we then at that time started to take a look at instructional leadership preparation for our pre-principals and then those that were already principals. And it's a reason why we added the classroom walkthroughs, that we would be able to start to see the practices in the classroom, if there was transfer from the professional development, from what the principals we were sharing with them on a monthly basis, if all of that was transferring, if the principal was able to give appropriate feedback and understood how they could assist the teacher or provide intervention support based on what was at the school. Jennifer, I know you were in a different role at that time, but I don't know if there's anything else that you remember as it relates to the factors that may contribute to schools that may not be performing as well.
So thanks again for the question, Chair. Dr. Sasser just pointed out the importance of the teacher in the classroom, and when we have vacancies, making sure that we have the supports that are in place in those cases, because sometimes that is a indicator where we see drops. The empirical data does support the impact of the teacher in the classroom as being the number one impact, and then the leadership at the school following that. So, we're blessed to have amazing teachers and leaders across the district, and those are the two largest impacts upon our students.
Okay, and then even when you're looking at the teacher, there's probably components of what you're looking at there. In the transportation arena, they have what's called a crash data. Well, some companies offer a crash data management analysis, and it will look at not just crashes at a particular area, but weather conditions, the skid marks, time of day, all different factors, and looking for, are there commonalities that would indicate what exactly do we need to fix? And so I was thinking that the same would apply, and it sounds like it does, but is this something that you do every year?
So we have conducted risk factor analysis in the past that Dr. Vasquez was referring to. That has not been something that we've utilized, with the changing state assessment being part of that. But certainly we'll have additional conversations with Dr. Vasquez and see if that is something that we want to look at in the future.
Yeah.
But it is something that we've looked at in the past. From my experiences, I will say that there's variances within that. I mean, there are, and even as a prior principal, there are teachers in the first year that, the results are amazing. And then, others, it continues to progress as they go. And also there are teachers that have been with us for 20 years who have amazing results. So,
Yeah.
There's certainly different
Sure.
factors in there.
There's always going to
Yeah.
be outliers, but I know this board has been really interested in promoting training, education for our educators beyond what is required. And so it also would be interesting for us to see, does that translate, and how well does that translate in student performance? I think we all think it would, but it would be nice to validate that with data. And I started out this meeting by talking about how data-rich OCPS is, and the ability to access and draw conclusions from it is really pretty impressive. So, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And now that we're into, the state's progress monitoring system has been in place for a couple years, it gives us, more longitudinal, reliable data, as long as the scale scores kind of stay similar, for us to begin having this discussion again.
Yeah, thank you. Member Vanos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to follow up real quick with actually just something you just said about the progress monitoring data coming from the state, being able to give you continuous information. Do you feel confident that the progress monitoring tests from the state actually are valid?
So I will see if my team wants to add anything, Board Member Vanos. But I mean, we are confident that the progress monitoring assessments are aligned to the standards of the course and give us an indicator along the way of how our students are doing, which allows, for adjustments to be continually happening along the way. Parents are informed of how their students are doing as well and what they're expected to learn. The PM assessments do cover the content for the entire year. And so, we have a lot of pieces in place that help with that across the district with scope and sequences and those kind of pieces to ensure that we're covering all of the standards that are expected to be covered within a course that are going to be assessed.
And the other piece that I would add on to that is that part of the law when the assessment system changed from FSA to FAST was that the State Department of Education would conduct a study from PM1 to PM2 to PM3, so the beginning of year, middle of year, end of year, about the validity and predictive measures that are associated with the assessment. So they're currently doing that study now. They needed to build up their own data sets before they could conduct that study, and it's underway. We haven't heard from any outcomes of that, but it's an issue that that they're still looking into as part of kind of the long-term implementation of the new assessment system.
Thank you. And then that was really my question, because I know they passed they passed a law requiring it, and just like that, the test was out there. So I was just curious what studies were actually done to make sure that it was, measuring what it's supposed to measure. But it sounds like we don't really know, but they're working on coming up with that information now. Okay, thank you. So I had a question I was looking at the FAST ELA reading in 5th grade, and then to the next page in 6th grade and 7th and 8th grade. And I just see there's just a big drop in performance on the ELA test in middle school. And I was just curious why you thought that was.
Board Member Vanos, just asking a clarifying question. So when you say the big drop in middle school, I'm looking at can you provide more context?
Yes, I'm sorry.
on
So
that?
I'm looking at the 5th grade, the district is at 58%. I'm looking at the end of the year. Is it 58%?
I see.
And then
Okay.
6th grade is 52, 7th grade's 47, 8th grade's 49. And so I'm just curious your thoughts on, I have middle school is my soft spot, and I think we have some work to do in middle school. So I was just curious why you thought that was the case.
Yeah. Thanks, Board Member Vanos. Ben?
Yeah, so in mathematics, it's a little different than reading. So in math, the students get exposed to different content throughout the year, so it's new ideas that they've never seen before. So in the middle of the year, they're being tested on end-of-year standards, and so a substantial amount of topics they just haven't learned yet. So we tend to see bigger, I don't even want to call them drops, but differences between PM2 and PM3 and PM1, PM2, PM3 in mathematics, as opposed to reading where it's a similar set of skills. They're just being assessed at a higher level. So students who are strong readers will be able to apply those same skills to more complex texts at the higher grade levels. And so we generally don't see as much difference between PM1 to PM3 in reading as we do in mathematics. So it's really a content exposure thing. They just haven't seen the content yet.
So you're saying in middle school reading, they haven't seen the content yet that they're being
No, in
tested on?
mathematics, they haven't
Right.
seen the content.
No, I understand that. Yeah, I was actually talking about the reading portion, that, where it just seems to decrease or just get pretty low in middle school, and I was just curious as to why. And one of the reasons I'm asking is because I'm wondering, when you talk about the math and you're talking about the different sets of students who are taking the tests, I'm wondering if in middle school, part of the reason we're seeing a decrease is because, and I'm just asking the question, are we losing students for middle school? And is it just a different group of students taking the test? So that's really what I'm asking.
Got it.
Board Member Vanos, are you referring to the 5th grade state and district reading outcomes compared to 6th grade? Is that what you're?
Yeah, so I'm looking at
Okay.
slide 6,
Very
5th
good.
grade. It's showing the district for level 3. Level 3 is 58%. And then I'm turning the page and I'm seeing 6th grade now we're at 52%. In 7th grade, now we're at 47%. In 8th grade, we're at 49%.
Yeah. We'll follow up, Board Member Vanos, and provide additional information. I mean, the rigor of the standards, of course, and continues to increase as students go up. But to your point, we'll take a further look at that and provide additional information.
All right, Dr. Vasquez. And Dr. Vasquez, for the sake of this work session, if I'm not recognizing you, jump in and take ownership. Okay, thank you, I apologize.
No apologies are
The
necessary.
superintendent is pushing her button to be recognized, which, given the fact that she has all the answers to everything, I just would rather you feel like you.
No, I do not. Just a couple of points that, cohorts are different, right? And so when we're comparing the data, and what you're saying is true, but comparing last year to the current year, it's a whole different group of kids. So a better analysis is to look at the cohort group before, so where we were at the end of the year, let's say with 5th grade or 6th grade, and then where 7th grade is this year, because that's the cohort that represents last year's assessment. So on this slide, last year, the 6th graders were at 52% at the end of the year in reading. This year, that group, or most of them, because you're right, some students move out, they're not the exact same group, but now that group that was at 52, the middle of the year is at 46. Does that make sense? So when we're looking at the data, let's try and do it by cohort as well. That gives a better picture. And I'm also not sure how much the scale scores change from one grade to another. And so a student, it's like saying that our grading scale would change to make it simple. So let's say in 6th grade, and they may be a 90 to 100, but when they get to 7th grade, and I'm asking, I don't know if the band numbers change from one grade to the next. That would be something else for us to look at. Because it may be that 90 to 100 was proficient in 6th grade, but when they got into 7th grade, it's 95 to 100. And I know it's
Yeah, and that's, yes, the bands do vary by grade level, but there's a standard setting process that happened after the new test happened to kind of establish those cuts. So the levels, the range of the levels might look different when we're looking at the numbers. However, it's gone through a standard setting process at the state. One thing, if I could just jump back quickly to the validity question, because I don't think I answered that completely fully. The PM3 results are valid, so those have gone through multiple processes for vetting those. It's the PM1 to PM2 to PM3 that the state's doing the validity study on, and that's part of that ongoing process.
Got it. Okay, thank you. I'm almost done. I'm looking at slide 10, and Member Ferrant asked a great question about the district scores in 7th grade, and you had mentioned that one of the reasons that the score looks lower for 7th grade is because students are advancing into algebra and geometry so that they can be on track to take Calculus AB and Calculus BC. I would just be curious, well, I would be curious to know how many students are actually taking BC versus stats their senior year. I just have questions about that progression in general, and if we're doing students a service and pushing them ahead in math.
Thanks, Board Member Vanos. Appreciate it.
And then I have just one last question, and it's on slide 9. Member Ferrant had also asked about the numbers in 5th grade math, I believe. And you had indicated that you were sort of drilling down to find out what needed to be done to address some of the lower scores. And I was just wondering, how are you determining that? How are you drilling down to determine kind of what the students are lacking in that area?
So, Board Member Vanos, one thing I would add here is when we start looking at our achievement gaps, one of the strategies that's being looked at this year is how 4th and 5th graders are doing on number sense with whole numbers, because that was an area where students had struggled in year prior. So that's an example of how we can drill down to see which skills and content students are struggling on, and then if there needs to be additional intervention or remediation of skills, especially in mathematics, closing holes and gaps so that students can further along the continuum.
Okay. And I guess I was just wondering, is that just more teacher time, kind of one-on-one time spent with a student, or is it just giving them more tests?
So when we receive scores back, it's more than just the number. So the school and the district level are able to disaggregate the results of the assessment by strand, by grade level, by teacher, and those conversations take place some at the district level as they're talking with principal leaders and leaders, let's say about specific schools of concern and specific grade levels. And then at the school level, teachers are looking at their data, they're making adjustments, they're looking to see, I have 5 students that really did not master this particular strand, so I need to go back and reteach. And that's where our CAO department is I think they finished, but they were going into the curriculum resource materials and adding additional resources for that reteaching. And so teachers and principals and the district have the data that disaggregates where the students were so that they can then make decisions about who's going in intervention, who needs reteaching, who may benefit from additional tutoring if they're offering tutoring after school, to be able to address the concepts, primarily the concepts that haven't been taught, because in some cases, schools may be 2 weeks behind our scope and sequence, and they took the test, so it may show, well, they did not grasp this particular strand, and when they talk to the teacher, yes, we were behind, we didn't teach it, and so that's why the students didn't show that they demonstrated it.
Thank you.
Okay. Vice Chair?
Thank you. I just have a quick follow-up on the algebra and geometry, and it kind of goes along with what Member Vanos was saying. Do we have data on, when we look at that data, it's all students taking the algebra and geometry testing? Is it possible to pull out the ones that are 7th and 8th graders so that we can see, and I'm sure you guys already do this actually, but how successful the 7th and 8th graders obviously are, because I think that would be really interesting to see if it's either they're boosting our algebra and geometry scores because they're such bright kids, or are they not being as successful because they're so young? So I would love to see that data if you have it or you could pull it. I've always been interested in that whole concept of pushing them into algebra and geometry, and I'd like to know how that affects them.
Thanks, Board Member Byrd. We can pull that and share that, but it definitely boosts the scores.
Okay.
You'll see some internal measures of success later that are looking at the algebra percentages in high school specifically.
Good, thank you. And so or the superintendent just talked about when teachers look at data and they see, like a specific strand that maybe students didn't grasp. When we look at this data where it's, 53% at level 3 or above, so that means that 47% are not on grade level. That's a big chunk. That's not just a little piece. So what happens when that comes in and we look at that and we say, okay, well, right now we've got 47% of the kids that are not on grade level. How can they possibly catch up? Because they've got the scope and sequence they've got to get through. They don't have time to go back and reteach all that. I mean, I would imagine that this is a huge struggle. And this is why we're obviously trying to make changes early so that they don't get to this point. But what kind of is what are the strategies when we look at that and that huge chunk of kids that are not where they need to be already, like here in the middle of the year, and now we've got only the rest of the year to get through the new material and make sure that we've catch all those other kids up. Could you help me understand that a little bit?
I'll try a little bit. Some of this, or a lot of this, is possible because our incredible data team has been able to put together a platform where the data is accessible where it was not last year, for them to more easily manipulate the information. So there's a variety of strategies that can be used. Varies by school. Obviously, you identify who the students are. Some of the students may be pulled by a resource teacher or an interventionist for part of their day so that they are remediated in a specific area. Some may choose to regroup students. And so one teacher may take a group and work on a certain concept until they've mastered that, especially during intervention time or at some point during the day. Some of the schools offer the tutoring, and that is the focus of the tutoring. Some take advantage of some online tools where they can have the students specifically work on the areas of need. In some cases, in some of our more fragile schools, we actually have district staff that goes in and actually works with some of those students to try and get them up. We also have strategies where they will look at, let's say, the number of questions. If they get into a pinch, and it's like, okay, we only have 8 weeks before the test, we know we're not going to be able to get through all of this, and then they identify which ones would maybe take priority. Maybe that's based on the number of students. It may be based on how close they are, because on grade level, it could be a student that's at a level 2. And so level 2 child may just have a small misconception, and they're able to remediate in a much easier fashion than someone that is at a level 1. So there's various strategies. And then, of course, we also looked at the summer to help do some more remediation for some of those students that we may not have caught up.
All right. Member Douglas.
I am an optimist, and the numbers are going upward, not downward, so it's pretty good. Appreciate that. And I'm also a visual person, and I would like to know, can we see the variance between the schools, okay, and how they perform in each category? Okay, and I think that will better explain those numbers to us when we see the data between the schools. And my second question is, can those successful schools in math or reading or both share best practices with other schools that's struggling in those areas? So that's what I had to say.
Thanks, Board Member Douglas. So starting with your second point, I mean, that's an emphasis for us as a district. We're really want the professional learning community model to continue to flourish and grow, which allows for the sharing of practices within schools and across schools. Our reorganization to the cadre model also allows for schools to share with each other across the district versus just within a geographical area, which was kind of the prior alignment. So it allows for more advanced sharing across different schools across the district. To the first point, Dr. Vasquez, do you want me to speak to the first point? We do have data by school, Board Member Douglas, that we share. We have trackers that we put out to schools as they're developed. I mean, that we put out that is shared amongst the schools, and so we certainly can look to share that with the board.
Yeah, the board received the scores. Maybe our new
Last
board
time.
members
Yeah.
did not receive that, so we need to go back and make sure that they get the scores.
Back to you. Member Douglas? Okay. Yeah. To to the question of being able to visualize, Mr. Porter, on the question of being able to visualize, there, when Member Douglas asked the question, I was envisioning it as a graph of some type, although I know how many schools that we have, so I wasn't quite sure, other than a spreadsheet of some sort, if there is any other way of viewing that data.
Yes, so thanks, Chair. Thanks, Board Member Douglas. So we currently have Excel spreadsheets that we sent those out to the board prior, and we'll send those out again when those are final. However, what's coming to the board as a strategic plan update on February 11th is an overview of our interactive accountability denominator report that the team just developed. And we are currently training principals on the utilization of that tool and transitioning to assistant principals as well. And so once the board sees that preview, we're certainly happy to provide any additional assistance and support, but you'll be able to have visuals on each one of your schools with different graphs and pieces of information on how they're progressing relative to the state assessments.
Perfect. Yeah, I was thinking if you compared each one relative to the average of all of them, that would be probably the best visual tool. When you present that to the board, I'm assuming at that point you're going to share with us the methodology? Or
yes, well, that'll all be part of the presentation, Chair. I mean, it's the state data that we've put into a Power BI tool, which allows schools to interact with it in a much more user-friendly manner. It's also part of our goal of taking off of the plate of our administrators and teachers so that they have a tool that they can interact with instead of having to compile information and put it into other places.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Member Felder?
Thank you. A lot of the questions that I had, I think, with the rest of the board members and the superintendent answering the questions, some of them have been answered, especially when Member Douglas talked about the variance. If we could have some kind of, I guess, visual to see what that was about. But initially when Board Member Vanos talked about, asked the question about why was there such a drop as the children progressed, and I was just kind of going to sort of offer my opinion about that. Middle school is difficult, and I don't mean to say it like we don't have an answer, but it is difficult because of the competitiveness of the world and things that children are attracted to as they get through their adolescent and puberty. In elementary, the children, everybody's excited, they love school, but something happens between sixth and seventh grade, fifth and sixth, something happens. The distractions are far more. So I'm wondering if we can, because I don't believe that the teachers are not working hard. I know that they are, because I was a teacher, and I know they are. But I'm wondering if we could somehow, not necessarily revamp, but those persons that are coming in, and I know we don't have money for tutoring and all that, but people that are kind of coming in, we could kind of revamp their job description in terms of assisting with the teachers with the work, because reading, I'm excited that we're higher than the state in terms of our percentage. That means the people tell us, I wonder do they know all of this. We're doing something right down here. But if we could find a way to maybe assist, because I am concerned, and I know certain schools are always having a struggle. Certain schools in certain districts are having the same type of struggles as opposed to schools in other districts. So again, as it was suggested, one of the board members to see not in the template, but what are they doing to make this happen? If there's some kind of way we can share. I know years and years ago, sometimes we would do something like team teaching. Teachers would go into other teachers' classrooms, and they would watch, and they would, they would go and kind of see what the teacher was doing that was working. I don't know if we have that kind of time because our days seem to be shorter, and students are more in the classroom. We have more students than we used to have in classes, even though we are 7 periods out the day, but still not enough time. But I am concerned that we are at that point where it seems like it's dropping. If you look on page 10 at the mathematics, I'm not a math person, I'm ELA, but you look at 7th grade, 2023, 24, the district is at 36%. And then 2023, I'm on page 10, 24, level 3 is dropped in its PM2 down to 16%. So I'm sure you all are trying to find out. It's on page 10, that's where I'm looking. What happened, and I used to think that in the past, we've done very well with math, much better than we were with ELA. So, I don't know, what are we doing to kind of fix that, Dr. Border?
Thanks, Board Member Felder. So just wanted to talk on 7th grade for a moment. So 36 is where we finished last year. At PM2 last year, we were at 16%. So
okay, so we got better.
we went up from 16 to 36.
To 30, oh, I looked at it wrong.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, that's
Thank
okay.
you.
I'm glad you asked. And we're currently at 19%. So if we go up 20% again, we'll actually have made a 3% increase.
Okay, so we're at 36, and then 24, 25, we down at 19, right?
Yes, but if you compare that to where we were, Ms. Felder, at this time last year, we were
Yeah.
at 16%.
Oh, I see. So we were, okay. We are going up, okay. I looked at it wrong. I see it now. I understand it.
Thanks for asking
Dr.
about that.
Vasquez, did you want to chime in?
And I was waiting for Board Member Byrd to come back because really she's the one that alerted it or brought it to my attention. And so first I need to apologize to the board. We met last week, reviewed the presentation. It might have been the week before. No, it was last week because we were on vacation the week before. And when we decided to chunk it, I said I want the board to receive the presentation ahead of time. That responsibility came to me, and I blew it. I didn't send it to you ahead of time. So this is the first time that they are seeing it. It is my apologies. I was the one that was supposed to send it along with the preview that we were going to chunk it. And so we're going to take a little bit more time to answer their questions because it's the first time they're seeing it. So my apologies to the board. I believe we did do a one-on-one with the brand new board members just because we wanted you to have history. So, but everybody else, this is the first time. And we'll hopefully be able to get through all of this today. And like I said, we will go through the data with disaggregating it so that you're able to see it. But everything you're seeing right now is midpoint. So if we've gone up from this time last year, that's a good thing. And we may be far away from where we were, but this was done in December. So we have several months for us, and our teachers are amazing. And so they got us there last year, so I have no doubt that they'll get us this year. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I am absolutely delighted to hear that you didn't send it to us, because I've been sitting here beating myself up. I don't have time to go back and look at it, but there's been a lot of stuff coming our way, and I was just thinking, I missed this. One of the things that I'm going to go to Member Vanos in a minute, but in terms of the way we're presenting this material, it makes sense to us, but intuitively when you look at it, you expect 56 to be the first thing that happened. Then the 37 here would be the next thing, and then you would be at 39. So for the public, when they see it, they're going to see 56 dropping to 37 up to 39, And that's not really what it is, because PM2 comes before PM3. But I understand why you did it, because for the board's benefit, having them side by side is easier for us. It took me a little while to understand why we displayed this information, again, because I think some people could look at it and think we're jumping around more than we are. I don't know what the answer is to that, but just probably if I had gotten this ahead of time, I would have at least asked that question. But again, I don't know what the answer is, but I do like for the public, if they tune in, for them to get it.
Well, I'm hoping that if they see the dates, that might help.
Yeah, but the
maybe
problem
not.
is there's 23, 24, and most people are not going to have any idea what PM2 and PM3 mean. That's where, again, there's us.
We'll
yeah.
go back and take that feedback, because you're right.
Yeah.
We'll try and make it better.
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts, but we'll talk about that later. Okay, let's go to Member Vanos.
I just have one last question. And I don't know if it's for the superintendent or for you, Dr. Border. But first of all, thank you. And thank you for coming to my office and walking through this with me. And I still had all the questions, even though I did get briefed on it first. So, but my question, when we talked about just the factors that impact a school grade, because I just think it's important to talk about all of that, either you or Dr. Vasquez mentioned that teachers in the classroom had the #1 impact and the leadership in the schools had #2 impact. Is that even more impactful or influential on the testing and the school grades than just the socioeconomic status of the students? Is that what you meant by that, or?
Thanks, Board Member Vanos. No, I was referring to two of the highest impacts from some of the empirical research that's out there. There is additional empirical research that I just personally refuse to support or believe in, because I've seen it too many times where it can be refuted. But there is empirical research that speaks to socioeconomic status related to student outcomes. I think that, the two things I was mentioning have an ability to refute that research that is out there on that.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I guess my question it was not outcomes as much as it was on testing performance. So I appreciate that.
Understood. There's certainly much more to outcomes than the test, and we're hoping to capture that in our next strategic plan, which is coming to the board soon, because we agree there's a lot more to outcomes than the test scores. And so we're hoping to capture that in our next strategic plan as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Member Felder. Okay, all right, thank you. All right. There's nobody else on the board. You're up.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Board, for the discussion. I appreciate
Thank you
it.
all.
So now we are going to hope to move through our 18 key performance indicators of our strategic plan efficiently as I can, and so I'll do my best. I'm going to move quickly through the first slide of each key performance indicator, because those are the targets that the board had approved years prior, and so it's just kind of setting the stage for what we're working on this year to try to reach those targets. So if I need to slow down, just let me know, but my plan for each KPI is the first slide, move quick, the second slide, get into where we're at. So on slide 12, our first key performance indicator is narrowing or eliminating our English language arts achievement gap as measured on the Florida Assessment of Student Thinking. And so you can see where our gaps were last year in that final, in the third column for 23-24. And so based upon, if you look at our white to black gap last year being 29%, based upon the overall 70 and 41, we want to reduce that target by 3% this year to 26%. And so to accomplish narrowing and eliminating our achievement gaps, on the next slide are the strategies that have risen to the top that we're focusing on in our strategic plan this year. So first, we want to increase the percent of ELA standards aligned instruction, and this is being measured via classroom visits, and we are currently at 71% of what we're observing as standards-based instruction, which is up from 68 with a target of 75. Our next strategy is to increase the student achievement in ELA on the FAST for each of our student groups. You can see our targets in the final column. We will not have data by student group until we get official state files. So we can certainly share that with the board when those come out. And then the next one is decreasing the achievement gap in ELA as measured on FAST. And so similarly, for white to black at the first quarter, which is the third column over, we were at 25% with a target of 26. So we already were below our target. And so certainly if we maintain that pace, we are on track to do so. We will have the official state file data and be able to share out with the board our point as of the second quarter. But you can see for the first quarter where we were at relative to our targets. I wanted to cover our next key performance indicator and then pause for the next two, actually, and then pause for any questions on those three. Our next key performance indicator is narrowing our achievement gap when it comes to mathematics on the state assessment. And here, respectively, you can see white to black for 23-24. We finished at 31%, which is based upon the overall 72-41. We have a goal to reduce that by 3%, and that's similar as you look at our other gaps that we have across the district. But we want to reduce by 3%. And so on the next slide, what we're working on this year, the first one is we're looking at our level 1 and 2 students in 4th and 5th grade, specifically in the areas of number sense and operations with whole numbers category. And you can see at the first quarter, our 4th graders in that category were at 13%. They've now moved up to 30% with a target of where we want to reach of 58%. But also looking at the 23-24 outcomes, which is your third column over, we finished last year at 42. So we certainly are on a trajectory to surpass. For 5th grade, we are currently at 38%, which is our second quarter outcome, up from 19 the first quarter, so we doubled it. So again, certainly looking on track to surpass the goal, the target, or to reach the target of 58%, which exceeds last year's outcome of 49% by 9%. Our next area, a measure of success, is looking at our 7th grade students that are taking our regular math classes and seeing how they are doing on FAST. So this was kind of talked about earlier. And we were at 10% the first quarter, 3 and above. We are currently at 15%. We have a target set for 47% here. Our next measure of success is increasing the percentage of traditional high school students that are on grade level for Algebra 1, being 3 and above. And we were at 39% first quarter, currently at 36%, and we have a target of 45% in this area. Keep in mind that this one is measured by the content for that grading period. That is different than the other areas which are on assessment covering the content for an entire year. When it comes to mathematics, that's our internal measurement, and that covers the content for the 9 weeks. So comparing to a prior quarter may not be applicable in those cases. So I'll pause after our next KPI, which is to increase the percent of third grade students achieving at grade level and above on the FAST. Our target this year is 60%, an increase of 3% over year prior. To reach that, we're looking to increase the percentage of third grade students that are performing at that level on PM3. First quarter was 31, we moved up to 45. And so that puts us on a trajectory to pass the 57% of last year and also be aligned with the 60% target. We want our elementary administrators to participate in the Instructional Leadership Institute this year, which is our second year, and we are on track for 100% participation. We also want our elementary schools to offer 7 sessions of the Science of Reading training, and 100% of our schools have offered 4 sessions as of the second quarter, and so on track to reach 7 sessions this year. So I'll pause there and see if there are questions on those 3 key performance indicators.
Okay, I have a question on slide 13. I'm doing this again. I'm like, what was my question? I have down, why not all? Oh, I know, it's under increased percent of ELA standards aligned classroom, so they're increasing, but I'm not sure I understand why it's not higher, even though it's definitely increasing.
Are you talking, Chair, for the first measure, the increasing percentage of aligned instruction?
Yeah, because I mean, this is not student performance that we have less control over, but.
Correct.
So what does that mean that?
So we're looking when we visit classrooms to see if the instruction is aligned to the rigor of the standard. And it's a walkthrough tool that our school supervisors utilize when they walk through, and so it's collected that way. But we're seeing 71% of the instruction aligned to the rigor of the standard, which was up from 68% first quarter. So we're seeing it continue to move.
Okay, so when you
forward.
use the term rigor, that helps me a little, because when I saw this, I thought you're just saying they're just teaching something else. So if they have a class that isn't up to that standard, they're not going to be at that level because they need to meet the kids where they are. Okay.
Correct. And there are times where adjustments are made based upon how a class is performing and things
Right.
that may need to be done. And so, the walkthrough tool is just one piece
Yeah.
of this.
Okay. Slide 15. So my concern here, it looks like grade 4, we went from 13% to 30%. It's reasonable, we'll get to 58%. We're seeing, huge jump grade 5. 7, it may come back to the same answer you've given us before, but we only went up 5 percentage points. And if I'm understanding this, we have a goal of 47. So the rest of them, I think, are reasonable goals. I remember we spent a lot of time on what these targets would be, but obviously, not only are we not going to hit it, but was it reasonable to begin with? And why was it 33 last year and 10 and 15? Just again, it may come down to the same answer, but you'll just have to tell me the same thing again.
Chair, we'll follow up and get more, we'll follow up with staff and get more information.
Okay.
But we finished last year at 33. And
Yeah.
so we certainly, there's a lot of intervention and other pieces that take place now, between now and the state assessment. And so I do believe that we can make that jump to be where we were at last year and hopefully move towards our target of 47%, but I'll follow up with staff.
Okay,
and
so
provide
let me
additional
ask one other
information.
question. Yeah, you're right. If we were at 33 and we were thinking 47, that's kind of in line. It's a little, kind of in line with the other increases. What I'm not sure of is, were we looking at these same percentage increases the previous year, and did we make it? But you'll follow up.
I'm glad you asked that question, Chair. I was thinking the same thing as I was
Okay.
sitting here. So we'll
Oh, well, I'm so glad.
we'll look and see what our data was in that area last year, and it may cause us reason to say okay, or we may need to have a further look.
Yeah.
Dr. Vasquez.
Well, I feel validated, but you also might just be appeasing me. I don't know, but whatever it is,
No,
thanks for.
I was
Okay.
thinking the
Okay.
same thing, Chair.
Dr. Vasquez, did you want to speak to that? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Okay, so we're going to move on to our next set of key performance indicators. Our first one is looking to increase our participation and performance in meaningful accelerated pathways. Again, this is measured by how acceleration is measured from the state assessment system. So in middle school, last year we finished at 76. We have a target of 84. In high school, we finished at 64. We have a target of 71. So what we're working on this year is 5 different metrics. The first one is we want district performance to reach 71 overall for our high schools, which is what you saw on the last slide. We're currently at 53%. It's important to keep in mind that a lot of students earn their industry certifications as the year goes on, later in the year. They also may pass advanced placement, IB, Cambridge exams, which all fall into this, pass dual enrollment courses. So this number will continue to grow up and pretty exponentially throughout the rest of the year. Next, 75% of our traditional high schools will reach 71. So that's looking at each individual high school and are they currently at 71? Again, there's a lot more to happen between now and the end of the year. And so that's as of today. 2 of the high schools are already at 71. So I don't feel any angst there, given that a lot of that comes in much later in the year. Our next one is to the district performance will reach 84% overall for middle school. We'll share that with the board soon. Again, there's pending PMA data there that ties in with algebra and geometry in middle school because that counts on their acceleration in middle school. And so we will provide that to the board as we are able to have a closer look at that information. We want half of the middle schools to be at 84% or higher. We were at 14% first quarter. We'll be much higher now. We'll be higher now. I don't know the percentage higher, but we'll have a look at that and share that with the board based upon PMA 2. And finally, we want to provide opportunities for middle school students to get college and career exploration through our career and technical education centers. And we've had 20 events so far with a target of 27. The next KPI I wanted to discuss is our teacher self-reported student resiliency. So this is something that teachers respond to on our survey. We were at 86% last year, and our target this year is 89%, which is teachers indicating that they are confident in their ability to support student resiliency. To reach that, we want all of our schools participating in resiliency events. We are continuing at 100%. We want our school staff to be confident after completing the resiliency course, so we survey them. We're at 77% as of the second quarter. Our goal is we want 100%. We want school administrators to participate in resiliency training. We have a target of 100% for that we'll continue to work towards. We want our school-based student services teams to also be confident after their professional learning sessions. And we're at 88% confidence among those student services teams. We want to embed resiliency strategies into the district new teacher induction program, and we're at 100% for doing that. So we've already exceeded the plan that we had for that. Our next key performance indicator is that all of our traditional schools will be rated C or higher. We currently had all but 4 schools there at 98%. We want to get to 100% this year. To do that, we're looking to increase the communication with our teachers and families via talking points. You can see the breakdown as of the second quarter. We have not been able to disaggregate that specifically to teacher, but for all staff at the schools, we're at 66%. And it's the same for our families communicating back with us at 66% on talking points. We have goals of 75 and 60% respectively, so we're already exceeding the planned goal for families. We want to improve the percent of students scoring at or above grade level on the corresponding ELA state assessment by 3% at Eagles Nest, our Academic Center for Excellence, College Park, and Memorial. You can see that we moved up 13% at Eagles Nest, 8% at Academic Center for Excellence, 13% at College Park, and we've moved up 9% at Memorial. So they all are continuing to move forward. We want to achieve retention rate of 65% of our instructional staff in the schools I just mentioned, and we are on pace for that. As of the end of the second quarter, we were at 65%. So I will pause there on those 3 key performance indicators and see if there are questions.
I have a couple of questions for you. Slide 19. Row 2. Yeah, okay, so I've got to be misunderstanding something. So the target is 75%, and I'm looking at 4.5% and 9%. What am I misunderstanding here?
No, thanks, Chair. This one is, we're obviously in the final year of this strategic plan, but as we move into futures, if this becomes a measure of success, we'll look at how maybe we word it. But the intent here is that 75% of our traditional high schools, so there's 23 of them, so 75% of those 16 will reach a level of 71% or higher on their acceleration rate. And so as of today, there's 2 of them, which is tremendous because a lot of this is going to come in later in the year when students complete industry certifications. They take their AP exams, IB exams, Cambridge exams, and pass them. They pass dual enrollment courses with C or higher. All of that will factor in, and so these numbers move up really exponentially throughout the rest of the year. So that's as of today. 2 schools are already at that percentage.
Did we have something similar to this last year? Because that answer I've heard before.
So actually last year for this, our measures of success actually just mirrored our scorecard.
Okay.
And so we wanted to try to take it a little bit deeper this year, but
Yeah.
it's been a similar discussion.
But what I remember was that I'm looking at this thinking it's going to gradually increase, and you explaining that completion factor happens at the end of the year. So
This
that's-
is one, especially at the high school level, you can look for exponential increases, and even middle school, because there are, if they're taking a high school course and they pass it successfully, some of those courses count in this component, and so that, those won't count until they've completed it at the end of the year.
Slide 21. I'm sure there's an equal explanation for this, but the school administrators being at 30%, that surprised me.
So I would just add, Chair, that, there's a lot on the plates of our administrators and a lot coming. And so, we'll certainly continue to offer sessions and encourage attendance. But, we're at 30% now, and there will probably be exponential gain here as well. But it's not a required, training, but it's one that we put out there and offer. And so we'll continue to do that and market the opportunities.
And the last, slide 23. I know you covered this, but that's really exciting to see that growth in those schools. So I know you covered it, but rather than just focusing on the areas of concern or question, I just want to take a minute to just, wow.
Thanks, Chair.
This was wow.
Thank you.
Okay. Member Salamanca.
Thank you, Chair. So one of the questions I had was around the middle school accelerator options. So, no, it's not this one. It's the one where it's like how many of our students are participating in some of the accelerated pathways. Yeah, I think it's that second to last, 51 tradition was. So what are we counting here in terms of acceleration components?
Thanks, Board Member Salamanca. So this is how the state measures us on acceleration. And so, Ben, if I leave anything out, feel free to jump in. But the denominator's different. So at high school, the denominator here is the entire senior class that is on a standard diploma track. In middle school, these are the students who are level 3 or higher on their FAST assessment. So that is the denominator. And then to satisfy being considered accelerated for this component, if they pass Algebra 1 or Geometry, if they pass a high school course, if they obtain an industry certification, Ben, am I leaving anything out?
Yeah, so just in the middle school, it's really the majority of our students in that middle school acceleration pathway are in Algebra 1 or Geometry. It's also any of the other courses with an EOC associated with it, so that would be biology, U.S. history, civics is a middle school EOC, so that doesn't count. But any of those courses, if they pass the EOC level 3 or higher,
Right.
they
That's
count
the denominator. Okay.
as being, that's the numerator. That's how they
numerator,
get their
okay.
acceleration. There's another component of that actually lags by a year, which is industry certification at the middle school level. So students last year who took an industry certification test and passed it would also count towards that middle school acceleration component.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense to me now. All right, I just wanted to know what those definitions were. Thank you.
Thanks, Board Member Salamanca.
All right, moving forward.
Okay, moving on to our next set of key performance indicators. Our first one is increasing students' positive perceptions of classroom and school-wide culture. Last year, respectively, in middle school, we were at 30, and high school, we were at 34. We have respective targets of 39 here. On the next slide, you'll see what we're working on this year. I would also be remiss if I did not remind the board that we transitioned our survey in-house at a $500,000 cost that it was prior, and we transitioned that in-house. We also looked at the number of questions on the survey last year. We had committees with staff. We have greatly reduced the number of questions this year, which has led to, in most cases, higher participation this year. And so I don't think I can say scientifically, but I think more reliable data, because people may be reading the questions more and answering them with them being fewer. So I use that as a preview to say we're looking at the schools that are part of our Stetson University pilot, which was a set of schools in this area that had some of our lower schoolers before. Stetson is supporting us. And so the fall survey, 100% of those schools were above 39%. You're going to see that similarly, because with the new survey, we are looking much better, but I think also much more reliable information. In my opinion, that's anecdotal, but I believe so. Our target is 100% of those schools continuing on that track. For middle schools that fell below 39% last year, we were asking them to do a secondary dive survey after the fall survey, where they could go deeper into a specific area that they wanted to find out more about. We all exceeded that. However, the superintendent asked that we still look at our schools in the lower quartile as part of continuous improvement and still work with them on a secondary survey. And so that's currently in place and happening. But all of our middle schools scored above the target of 39% on the fall survey. And similarly at the high school, all scoring above it. Matter of fact, 86% there was the scores in that category. And I'm sorry, I would be remiss on this. So let me reset. 69% of our middle schools scored above it. Overall, it has certainly gone up, which you'll see in other slides. 86% at the high school level. But we are working with the lowest quartile of our schools to take a deeper look on where we're at with that. I'm going to reset on this one more time. That was the number of schools last year that were below those numbers. The reason it's NA this year is all schools are above it. My apologies for that. Happy to answer questions, though, when we get to that.
Any other questions?
Re-clarify.
We're good.
Student sense of belonging. Similarly, last year, our middle schools were at 38 and our high schools 35 respectively. Target this year, 41 and 38, which are 3% increases. So again, here you can see the number of schools last year that were below those numbers. This year, on the fall survey, all of our schools are outperforming those numbers. And we're still, though, going to do a secondary dive with the lower quartile schools to continue to move forward. For sense of belonging, at SAFE meetings, we want safe and school-based social worker meetings, that topic to be covered at all those meetings, and that has been covered at all of those meetings. Next key performance indicator is increasing the efficiency of recruitment efforts by what we call touch points, which is when we're interacting with employees that we're recruiting. And we had a target of 812, which is for the end of the year. We are already at 788, so well on pace for that target. To reach that, we want to attain at least an 88% response on our junior and senior intern survey satisfaction. We're at 94%, exceeding our target of 90. For our students our UCF students go on our Title I tours to see the great things at our schools. We're at a 93% satisfaction with a goal there of 85%. And we want to increase the number of events attended to recruit instructional staff by 3%. We have a target of 170. We're already at 103 as of second quarter. Next, we want to increase the retention rate of instructional and non-instructional personnel. We have a target here of 89%, which is a bump up from last year. It's important to note that that is exceeding the national retention rate average. We want to increase the retention. To do that, we're looking at our resignation rate for all non-hourly positions. As of second quarter, we were at 3.25%. We want to be under 8.29% by the end of the year. For retirement rate, for non-hourly, we are at 0.65%. We want to be under 1.6% at year end. And for communication with all employees in year 5 of drop, because they can go for 3 more years, we've done that with all of those employees. Our next key performance indicator is looking to increase the amount of available resources through innovation and collaboration. We measure this through our rebates. We had a target of $618,378 this year. To reach that, we're looking to increase the number of rebate resources to 2 this year. We also are looking to have 2 of those this year. We want to increase the number of contracts with rebate options. So we're looking to have 1 of those this year. And we also want to increase awareness through targeted monthly communication on contracts and initiatives with rebate options. And we have a target of 12 for that area. Cover one more KPI, key performance indicator, and then see if there are any questions. Next is reducing the number of classroom portables. We have a target of 831. We finished at 1,031 as of, our outcome last year was 1,031. We have a target to be down to 831 this school year at the end. To do that, we want our new schools to open on time. We are 1 of 2 on schedule. We want to remove unneeded portables. We have 21 lease portables removed. We have a target of 230 to be removed, and a lot of that, of course, happens through the end of the year and in the summer. Master schedules reviewed to ensure that our portables that are at our schools are needed. And so that's part of the budgeting process in the spring with waiting enrollment projection figures. And we want functional equity of classroom addition projects open on time, so all of our additional construction projects at our schools. And we have 3 of 6 projects on time. So I will pause there and see if there are any questions before we continue.
Thank you. Member Ferrant?
Thank you. I just had a quick question regarding the Stetson University pilot on school climate and culture. Do we know how many students actually participate in that?
I will follow up, Ms. Front, and get you additional information on that.
Perfect. And then the other thing I'd love to see is, what does that survey look like? Like, what kind of questions are we asking? How many questions are there? I do know that the longer the survey is, the more kids tend to just click whatever they want to get done with the survey.
And so just to clarify, Ms. Ferrand, are you talking about the survey we use as a district? Because I'll need to find out more details on the Stetson support. I don't know that they're doing a survey or if it's training and professional learning with our staff. So when you say survey, do you mean our staff survey? Or
whatever survey we're giving the students.
The
So if that
students?
came from
Perfect.
Stetson, or if that's something that we're providing.
I'll share with you our district survey that we're giving, and keep in mind that we just survey our secondary students. So,
Perfect.
okay.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's all we have.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, our next key performance indicator is our use of district wellness resources. And so you will see our targets respectively this year for our physical exams, our well visits, our breast cancer, cervical cancer, and colon cancer screenings. To reach those targets, we want OCPS positive news stories during awareness months on cancer screening. And those are slated to be occurring in the months respectively of January, March, and May. We want to communicate to employees that have not had their cancer screenings but should be, according to recommendations from the CDC or American Cancer Society. And so far, cumulatively, we've had 4 of those, so we are on pace to reach our target of 7. We want our employee wellness representatives to provide bi-monthly communication on screenings and other wellness activities. And cumulatively, we are already at 43 of those events. Next, we want to increase a high-quality, responsive, and customer service experience. This is specifically related to information technology and heat tickets that are completed. And we have a target of 98% satisfaction. To reach our target, our CIO team has a target of 91 visits with school administrators and staff. Next, we aim to increase efficiency improvements for common issues, and we have a target of 27 for that by end of year. Next, we want to establish a self-help program to assist users to select the proper entry for tickets or assistance, an average of at least 5 times per month with a target of 20. So that chatbot has been built. It's in the final phases of quality assurances, and we want to just make sure it's expansive enough, and the plan is for a February rollout. Next, we want to increase the number of volunteers and partnerships. You can see our target respectively for volunteers of 79,638 and 5,306 for partnerships. To reach our target, we aim to increase the number of Read to Succeed volunteer tutors by 30%, which would take us to 604, currently at 311. Next, we want to increase the OCPS employees who volunteer to 5,620 or more. We already have 5,130. Next, we want to increase our current corporate projects by 3% to 88, and we're currently at 56. And finally, we want to document the number of businesses targeted and registered based on prospect research and our collaboration groups with a target of 42, and we have reached that target. Our next KPI is to increase the total dollars raised by the Foundation for Orange County Public Schools. We have a target of $5,455,644. To reach that target, we want to increase the number of new donors to at least 3,000, currently at 977. We want to increase the retention rate of donors to 25% or higher. We're at 17.15. We want our individual donors to increase to 4,000 or more, and we're currently just under 2,000. We want to increase our followers on Facebook and LinkedIn. We're at 4,542. And we want to increase donors to our OCPS Gives campaign to 500, and we are already at 440. Next, we want to increase opportunities for stakeholders to provide feedback across Orange County Public Schools. And we have a target of 1,454 opportunities. So our chiefs and deputies have a target of 948 school visits this year. Our superintendent had a focus group and town hall goal of 90 this year. And our thought exchange across divisions with stakeholders, we had a target of 416, and we're already at 690 in that category. And so all these will feed into that overall key performance indicator. And finally, or not finally, next we want to increase the district's internal and external satisfaction rating, and it is finally, across the district, and known as our Net Promoter Score. And we were at 34% detractors last year. We want to decrease that to 28% detractors. To reach that, our district divisions are going to have a goal to decrease detractors by 3% on the fall survey, and almost 27% of our divisions did that. We want to decrease detractors by 3% on the fall survey compared to last year, all of our schools, and 26% of our schools did that. And we also want our schools to decrease detractors by 3% from the fall to spring survey, and we'll be able to see that when the spring survey is administered. So that is our final key performance indicator, and so I will look forward to questions from the board and discussion. Dr. Vasquez.
Again, thank you so much to the team and to all of our chiefs that have really helped drive the work in our strategic plan. Board members, we greatly appreciate the feedback that you have given us today. As we move to close out the 2025 strategic plan and move into our new strategic plan, any other changes you would like to see to the reporting of the data that would make it more helpful? We would love to know as soon as you're able to, as we are already anxiously finalizing our new strategic plan. So thank you again.
Thank you, Superintendent. We have 3 board members queued up with comments or questions, and I am first. So I have a quick question about the customer service indicator, and you had said that this relates to our heat tickets in the IT department. So my question is, and this might be something we can look at for our coming strategic plan, but is it possible for us to also look at in the future our customer service experience of parents for the schools? Because that's probably one of the biggest complaints I get is either phones not being answered at schools when they call the school, or phone calls not being returned. Those are 2 of the biggest complaints I get from parents about schools, and I think that has a huge impact on the perception of our schools and how, helpful and willing they are. And really, a lot of times it is just everyone's busy or something's going on. But I always feel like there should be somebody at a desk answering a phone at a school. But anyway, so could we add that at somewhere in our indicators? Because I think that's a really, at least that's my opinion, that's a really important thing that we need to really work on, make sure our schools are providing, especially in this world of choice. We need to be treating our parents with that kind of responsiveness. So I would love to see that added at some point.
So thanks, Board Member Byrd. So I think that we have an opportunity in the next strategic plan, and even currently with the spring survey, with the secondary dive surveys, our schools that score in the lower quartile have an opportunity to follow up with additional questions. And so with our schools that are in the lower quartile with their families, we'll work with the team to add in questions specifically about customer service and the examples you gave. So that way we can see if that, like you're saying, you're getting communication on that as a contributing that we can then address.
Perfect, thank you. Next is Member Vanos.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I also just want to elevate what Member Byrd said. In fact, I was at a middle school today, and the principal was telling me that he'd read for every 1 negative experience a parent has, you have to have 10 positive experiences to make up for it. So I just think that's such an important point. The question I had, and I'm sorry, this was actually in the chunk we did before this on slide 29. I just have one question. And we had talked about it when you came into my office about the interns in OCPS, and I really appreciate the follow-up that you provided me. I had asked how many interns we had and how many were hired, and you had shared that there were 292 interns that we had in OCPS. We'd hired 149 of them. My question is, what percentage did we make offers to, and what percentage accepted the offer? And I know you probably don't have that right now, but if you could follow up with that. I'm just curious about, love the positive survey feedback. My question is just, does this ultimately a place that they would want to work? And I know there are other factors there, but I'd be interested in that.
Thanks, Board Member Vanos. We'll follow up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Member Farrat.
Perfect, thank you. So mine is not really a question on the data, but more what Dr. Vasquez was saying, like how can we improve for the 2030 plan? And I think for me, and it sounds like a lot of us up here, just breaking down the data a little bit more, even if it was something where we can click on it and it would just come up with a little more information, especially for that ELA and math, because a lot of that can be confusing or misconstrued, especially that 7th grade when you're seeing, okay, maybe this test, we only actually tested 200 students because 800 of them were taking the pre-algebra test or algebra 1 or whatever it might be. And so I think for us to kind of understand that, it would be really helpful, again, with the STAR reading and the STAR early literacy, those types of components I think would be really helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Board Member Front. Appreciate that feedback, and excited to share the tool with you on February 11th. We're getting a lot of positive feedback so far, and there'll be opportunities for us moving forward to continue to look at that tool and see how we can continue to take it to the next level.
Wonderful. Thank you. Does anyone have anything else to share? Okay, finding no further. Oh, one more thing. Member Salamanca.
Just to say thank you. I know the team has been doing so much work between preparing this and also what will be the future strategic plan and the data. So I definitely appreciate that you've had a lot of parallel work, and I'm very excited for the new numbers, and I think we're being very thoughtful about the new categories and what makes sense to measure and what doesn't. And so just props to the team. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Board Member Salamanca, and thanks to the board for all of your collaboration. I'm excited for OCPS 2030 to come to you soon, and looking forward to what that can bring to the district. And also, thanks to the working group leaders as well as the chiefs for all their continued support of the strategic plan. They do a tremendous job helping to move everything forward and providing information for this presentation today. So thanks to them and their teams as well, because the working group leaders do a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Felder.
Yes, I too, along with Member Salamanca, I know this is a lot of work, and you didn't just do it overnight. It took a lot of effort, and anytime you come into my office, you allow me to ask all kinds of questions, and you answer all of you when I'm meeting with you. And I just want to tell you thank you. And I believe, as the superintendent suggested, some more things are going to happen so that we can get some clarity, because I specifically, and I'm sure other board members may have the same sentiment, I'd like to know within my district, some of the schools and what, I see that there was a great deal of success with a lot of my schools, and I'm so grateful because my principals, all of them, they work very, very hard, and the teachers, and I'm just so incredibly grateful for what they do, and they do it like they love it. So I'm so happy. And the cabinet members who come, they're always in my schools doing things, so I'm happy. But I would like to know, because if there's some specific kinds of issues that we need to zero in on to help our students become more successful, then I am all for that, because we don't know the climate that's going to come with the ensuing year and how many children. We just don't know what's going to happen to their ability to be able to stay in school and learn how to read and do mathematical computations with success. We don't know, so while we're on this road of upward, mobility, I want us, and I'm so proud of this district in terms of what we do, because we are the 4th largest and 8th in the nation. So to me, that speaks volumes. We have 22 high schools, about to be 23 that'll be graduating next year, 25, 26. So I just want to tell you thank you for your effort, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Felder.
Thank you. The superintendent.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So 2 points. First, I know that we have a training coming up. I'm wondering if we could take maybe a 10-minute break. And second, those that are not involved with the training, that would be anyone that is not a board member, anyone that does not sit on the dais or on the 2 sides, or the individuals that are going to do the training do need to leave because it's a confidential training. And then third, Board Member Byrd, did you hear my comments apologizing?
Yes, I did,
Okay,
because I heard it on the TV in the back. I turned it on back there. Yes.
All right. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. I real fast, right before I adjourn, I just wanted to comment again, because I was in the back when we were talking about the board members getting individual data for your schools. I do want to definitely agree with that, because we as board members are often asked either by our chambers or, other elected officials or in our constituents, they want to know, hey, what's going on with so-and-so school, how's it doing? And I would love to be able to share some of this great data. Wow, you would not believe the good things that are happening at, this school or that school. So, yeah, I definitely feel like that's going to be so beneficial for us board members.
Thanks,
Thank
Vice
you.
Chair Burr.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.